Good morning. It's Tom Padula from TomPadulaTV on YouTube and Insegna Booksellers. And this is Italian lesson number 48. And it's the 4th of October, 2022. And today is another interesting part of the journey because I'm going to be doing letteratura dottrinale in Francia ed in Italia and letteratura moraleggiante e religiosa nell'Alta Italia. So this is from the history of Italian literature, and as I said, I was going to cover the centuries as we move along, but then during the course of my of my research presentation, I came across interesting material, and I'm giving it to you, basically. And the language is not always easy, but at least it's there, and we can interpret. What people say, because we've seen with the Italian language developed from the Latin, slowly through the centuries, and we've come across some of the early uses of the vulgus, of the vulgar language. In other words, as Latin sort of fell apart in a way. The language doesn't fall apart, but the use of it falls apart amongst the people. And therefore, what happens is that there are the changes. Now, this is a dramatic change from Latin into the vulgar Italian. And then, of course, with the arrival of Dante and Petrarca and Boccaccio and the others, then we start getting la scuola della Crusca. In other words, some people in Italy, the writers said, well, we have to go with the language of the people. But the church held pretty tight rein on Latin up to Vatican in 1964, when Latin, the Mass was celebrated in Latin all the time, and people. And then the changes were made. You can use whatever language you want. So it took centuries before Latin was eradicated practically from daily use. But there are still people who prefer to maintain the Latin. And, for me, it's just another study of another language. And it's an old language to be respected. So Latin could be a subject again in schools, and it is in some places, but it's not very widely practiced anymore. Okay, so that was that. And then I will also, of course, go back to the Latin and read a little bit of Latin and do a bit of the Roman history. I thought that was appropriate as well, so we understand the context in which. In which Latin was used, and the great influence that particularly the Roman Empire had on the rest of Europe and the Middle East, and literally all over the world in a way, except where it did not have people in place in a political sense. So I'm talking about China and South America, etc. But then through, let's say, the voyages of the great navigators to South America and to Asia and through Africa, Latin has been a world language, and I think it still is in many ways. From there, I said I would not forget in these Italian lessons here, I would not forget la pratica and la grammatica. The grammatica is falling a little bit by the wayside, but there's been a lot of explanations about it in lessons 1 to 20, and I encourage people to now access those through insegna.com. The lessons there are there for both la grammatica and la pratica from lesson 21 to 40. So we're doing la storia della letteratura italiana and you know the Latin, from Latin to Italian to modern times, and then I'll read some you know, I'll do a little bit of practice in the language, and also some singing, of course. That's to lighten up the load. Now, with the singing, I've been putting them aside for, I call it the choral improviso, 12 songs each time. And I've organized already 7 or 8, so 8 actually, I'm up to 8. So 8, 12, that's 84 songs so far I've put in place for me to sing and to practice on and for people to enjoy. Because our Italian singers from World War II have done really, really well in establishing a very particular Italian song history. Now, you know, modern Italian singing is a bit different. So we're talking about, you know, 50 years, basically. In 50 years, a lot has happened. And, you know, there's quite a number of songs that are just truly magnificent. Really and truly. Okay, it's 11:30. Let's start, okay? I better have another drink. Ok, let's go. Letteratura dottrinale in Francia ed in Italia. Posto dunque che l'arte pedagogica, sia che si proponga di esporre la scienza, sia che miri a fini religiosi e morali, è una contraddizione in termini, poiché l'arte, essendo forma inscindibile del sentimento, non si può prestare, senza annullarsi, allo scopo di rendere più accessibile e gradito o più efficace l'insegnamento nei suoi molteplici aspetti. Ne consegue che quella letteratura dottrinale può avere la sua importanza nella storia della cultura, ma non in rapporto all'arte. Now this is a lovely little paragraph in which the authors of this particular book are questioning whether in fact this letteratura dottrinale can serve, you know, the arts, because the arts, you know, poetry, it's supposed to be sentimenti, so you can't regulate it. And that's what la letteratura dottrinale is. It's a regulation in order to direct the people towards Christianity. And they were very concerned about where their souls were going after death, after this temporal living that we do in a short period of time. In terms of eternity, it's really quite minuscule, and also in terms of what happens to the soul after we die. And in the Middle Ages, there was no question that there was another world that was totally accepted. Ok, ciò ricordato, eccovi alcune notizie. So, here we go. Gran divulgazione ebbe in tutta Europa il roman della Rose, composto nel 200 da Guglielmo de Loris e continuato da Giovanni de Meung. Si tratta di una vasta allegoria intorno all'amore e la rosa simboleggia la donna. So, roman de la Rose, it's in French, of course. These are because French had already taken quite strong roots in French, the language, French language. In Italia, sull'esempio francese, venne fuori una produzione non scarsa di dottrinali, in versi e in prosa. Eccelle Ser Brunetto Latini. Brunetto Latini, he was supposed to be Dante's good teacher or mate or whatever. And he lived in 1220 to 1293. So what was he, 73 years old when he died. Notaio fiorentino, il quale, se non propriamente maestro, come si credeva, fu certo un affettuoso consigliere per Dante. Inferno, canto 15, we meet Brunetto Latini. Now, what happened to Brunetto Latini? Dopo la sconfitta dei Guelfi a Montaperti, 1260, visse per 6 anni esule in Francia. We're talking about Brunetto Latini. Welcome Zoraida Moros. Enciclopedia farraginosa di varia scienza. In settenari italici scrisse il Tesoretto. Tesoretto is one of the early works of Brunetto Latini and a precursor to Dante's Inferno and Purgatorio in Paradiso, chiamato così per la sua mole minore in confronto della prima opera. La sua prima opera, whatever it was, probably le favole, whatever. Chiamato così per la sua mole minore in confronto della prima opera, alla quale tuttavia rassomiglia negli intenti e nella sostanza. Per tutto il resto ci basti menzionare il pometto toscano, il nome rima l'intelligenza, allegorico ma non privo di qualche felice descrizione attribuita a Dino Compagni, di cui riparleremo, e l'altro pometto il fiore, riduzione in sonetti del Roman de la Rose ad opera di un Ser Durante fiorentino, che qualcuno volle identificare niente meno con Dante, le quali opere ci conducono già agli inizi del 300. Il 300, 1300. Il 300, il 300, ai principi del 300, 1300. So it's not the 13th century. This is the 14th, we enter the 14th century in the 300. Okay, that's one. Letteratura, so the general themes for the writers at the time was to use literature, to use the art in order to bring people to the doctrine, to the Christian living. I don't know whether they succeeded or not, but there were very violent times at you know, this is a precursor to the Renaissance, where a lot happens. So, letteratura moraleggiante e religiosa nell'Alta Italia. L'Alta Italia is not the center of Italy, it's l'Alta Italia, North Italy. Non un problema etico o politico o sociale, ma un problema religioso, nel più preciso senso della parola, premeva sulla coscienza dell'uomo medievale. So, middle-aged men and women, I suppose, had a real problem. They had a religious problem that they wanted to sort out. And the religious problem was come salvare la propria anima. How do you save your own soul? So since there is an outside world over there after death, what do we do to prepare for that? And how can we save our soul? Because there was it was a rough time all around. There were murders and everything went in terms of violence. But, you know, people worked against it, of course, but it was there present. People used to fight duels, kill each other. You know, they didn't go to prison, they just, someone else killed them. Mancavano orientamenti definiti e coordinati per la vita terrena. E allora, nella contraddizione e nei disordini di questa, si videro i termini di un problema la cui soluzione sarebbe avvenuta in un altro mondo. So because he said mancavano orientamenti definiti, there were definite lacking of legalities in the daily life of people in the Middle Ages, and it was disordinate because there were a lot of little states, and you know, everyone was trying to dominate their own area and against other people in similar situations outside of their areas. So that was the problem. How do you resolve that? si vedono i termini di un problema la cui soluzione sarebbe avvenuta in un altro mondo, o per meglio dire nell'altro mondo, poiché non si trattava per di più di una ipotesi più o meno attendibile, ma di cosa certa. It was certain that there was another world. They were absolutely certain about it. These days, some people doubt that there's anything afterwards. But if you had to choose, which one would you do? Would you leave yourself with some hope, or would you say, when I'm dead, and that's it? Some people can see that, but I like to think that we as humans, we do hope for another world. We're going to find out one day. Ora, di fronte alla vita eterna, but we can always hope, huh? Hope is the last one that dies. Ora, di fronte alla vita eterna, quella temporale rimane come annichilità. Like, the temporal living is like, don't worry about it. It's like un annientamento, from dust to dust sort of thing. Ed è considerata soltanto come una difficile prova e preparazione all'altra. So, but life was considered as a trial and in preparation for the other life. Ma questa negazione della finalità autonoma degli eventi umani cela un conflitto spirituale enorme. Per questa via l'uomo giungeva non tanto a disprezzare, come avevano fatto alcuni sapienti antichi, quanto piuttosto a temere la natura e il mondo, i quali egli sentiva imperiosi e resistenti allo sforzo di domarli e sacrificarli alla salvazione dell'anima. So, what does it say? There was a spiritual conflict here. How do you overcome nature, our fragile nature? How do we, what do we do? We're trying to contain and control life around us. And what happens? Our societies. But what happens then? We don't succeed. And that's a real problem, from a spiritual point of view. But if there is hope, we get over it. But it depends. So, val dire che le aspirazioni religiose del Medioevo, religious aspirations of the Middle Ages, tendevano ad una meta irraggiungibile. They tended to una meta, a goal that you cannot reach. It's like learning Italian. Can you learn it outside and not practice it outside of Italy to the level of the Italians in Italy? There's no way known. And even after many, many years of studies in a country like Australia, you're not going to have the same fluency as the Italians in Italy, because they live it. So le anime, the souls in paradise, they're living it every day. We're hoping to get there. But in our hope, it's a good thing that we try. It's a good thing that we learn another language. It's a good thing to accept the limitations of what we can do and enjoy what we do. It's a hard concept. Some people say, oh no, if I can't get there, I don't want it. I won't taste this food, I don't like it. But you've never tasted it. No, I don't like it. You never tasted it. Taste it just a bit, a tiny bit. No. Language, why do you need to learn another language? We speak English. That's enough. And that's the arguments all around us. So this is what, we're learning here. Okay? Val dire che le aspirazioni religiose del Medioevo tendevano ad una meta irraggiungibile. Se il giudizio di Dio si prospettava come l'inevitabile punizione dei tiranni e dei malvagi, so if you're a tyrant or a bad person, you could expect God's punishment. E nell'aspettativa nell'aspettazione di esso, si placavano le ire delle vittime di una società violenta e ingiusta. So the way they could sort of overcome this problem of, daily life that was unjust and violent. There were a lot of victims in the Middle Ages, a lot of victims. But they said those people who are committing these crimes against us, they're going to be punished by God, and they were sure of that. So they calmed themselves down. You accept the fact that if you're a victim, that the bully will be punished and be punished by God. Done. So you calm down and you say, okay, I accept it, God will reward me as a result. And will punish that person there. La legge del contrappasso, Dante's one. Delle vittime di una società violenta e ingiusta. Avveniva eppure che, commisurandosi all'ideale di perfezione cristiana, the ideal of Christian perfection, suggerito dagli asceti e dai predicatori, people who lived a singular life, and by the preachers of the time, nessuno sentivasi sicuro della propria sorte oltremondana. Nobody could feel how they were going to end up after their death. L'oltretomba diveniva quindi un incubo e in ogni impulso naturale si sospettava l'insidia del tentatore, più maligno e nocivo di ogni tiranno terrestre. So the devil. They felt that power, that malvagità, that viciousness that occurs in human life sometimes. Pullulavano perciò nel Medioevo i libri devoti, books of devotion, che narravano con rozzezza e candore leggende, miracoli, vite di santi. So they told us, there were a lot of publications then, but by the priests, not everyone could read. E non di rado vi appariva grottescamente terribile il diavolo, and the devil was always mentioned. Ma l'espressione più evidente di questa sognante angoscia sono le visioni con cui si tentava di dare un'idea del mondo di là, esasperando gli aspetti e le esperienze dolorose della vita presente e innalzandone al massimo le gioie migliori. So over there is going to be really a lot of fun. We're going to be happy, joyful, unlike in here. E in tal modo anticipando con l'immaginazione i tormenti inflitti ai peccatori. So they imagined, say, well, that's what Dante did. He imagined how these people are going to be punished. And he codified it in a way. E i premi erano largiti agli eletti. So the elected ones, the ones who were living good, they would end up in paradise. And they would be singing all along. Francis Gallo, welcome. Come facevano e fanno che anche oggi i predicatori del pulpito. Another one of those little touches here in this book. So when preachers are in church, what do they preach? They preach of the goodness, the Christian goodness will be rewarded in paradise. Okay, and the ones who commit bad things, well, they read from the gospel or whatever, and there's always mention of some sort of punishment, especially in the Old Testament. Definite punishments for people who commit crimes. Nei secoli XI e XII erano diffusi in Europa opere di tal genere, fra cui la visione, so we're talking about le opere, i libri devoti, of devotion, the religious books. So some of these books of the Middle Ages, in the 11th and 12th century in Italy, was La Visione di San Paolo, St. Paul's Vision, La Navigazione di San Brandano, La Visione di Tundalo, il Purgatorio di San Patrizio, e al secolo XIII appartiene una visione di frate Alberico. Now these books here are not readily available online. You might have to get the actual book from somewhere. Because I was looking for one for Tesoretto and I couldn't get it. But when I order books from Italy, maybe, if I see it, I'll order it alongside the others. That's the beauty of the journey of, la letteratura italiana, la storia della letteratura italiana, I viaggi, world history. All these are spiritual and intellectual journeys for the people who practice these. I am no exception. In Lombardia si ebbe poi una copiosa produzione letteraria, ove l'elemento moraleggiante si congiunge spesso o si fonde con l'ispirazione religiosa e che mirava soprattutto a istruire i devoti ravvivandone le convinzioni e la fede. So in Lombardy, in Milano, and Milano has remained a great place for publications. In fact, most of the books that we've imported in the past came from Milano, also Roma, etc. But Milano is a big one. Torino, all of that northern part, especially the Milano area. It's a lot of books that are being published. Also a center for music and CDs and DVDs in the past, video cassettes, all sorts of cultural manufacturing and production. Del cremonese Gerardo Patecchio from Cremona, o Pateg, vissuto nella prima metà del secolo XIII, si conservano due opere, Lo splanamento degli proverbi di Salomone, che in versi alessandrini rimati a coppia vuol parafrasare e dichiarare splanare i proverbi o le ecclesiaste della Bibbia. Okay? E le nuove canzoni in strofi di novenari, che ripiglia un tema assai diffuso nella letteratura provenzale, enumerando le cose che arrecano molestia o uggia o rincrescimento con un fare talvolta realistico, arguto, sincero, fervida, inquieta religiosità, si può trovare nel libro in versi volgari di Uguccione da Lodi. E nell'altra opera a lui attribuiti i titoli sono caratteristici dell'epoca, Contemplazione della morte, Miseria e vita dell'uomo, Anticristo, e vi si coglie l'eco delle contemporanee sette ereticali lombarde. La più diffusa era quella dei Patari. So alongside this Christian, the publication of Christian books and others, there was also some of the heretics as well. There was a small minority that goes against the trend. Scrittore di più alto livello e di larga dottrina è il milanese Bonvesin della Riva, morto vecchio nel 1313. In latino compose un trattato pedagogico misto di prosa e versi. So this guy here, Bonvesin della Riva, wrote in Latin. De discipulorum preceptorumque moribus, ed una cronaca encomiastica de maialibus urbis Mediolani. I'm not going to translate that. In volgare, rivolgendosi al più vasto pubblico, dettò il poemetto de quinquaginta curialitatibus ad mensam, ossia 50 regole di buona creanza o temperanza per il commensale. So he wrote in Latin and he just left it at that, but the Italian one went to a large audience. A scopo di ammastramento ed edificazione religiosa, egli che fu del terzo ordine degli umiliati, that's, friars or brothers, volgarizzò i distica o distica catonis, silloge di sentenze morali del XIII-XIV secolo, e compilò attingendo da varie fonti le lodi della Vergine Maria, la leggenda di Maria Egiziaca, vari contrasti fra padre e figlio dannati nel giorno del giudizio, fra l'anima e il corpo, fra la Vergine e Satana, fra le rosa e la viola, una sorta di contrasto e puro il suo trattato dei mesi, ove ciascun mese taccia di pigrizia gennaio, vantando i propri meriti. Altro aspetto interessante di questo scrittore si trova nel poemetto De Elemosinis, ove malati e malattie sono descritti con sprazzi di crudo realismo, fino all'orrido e al ripugnante. Tendenza questa che andava congiunta alla mistica ascetica, per il proposito di innalzarsi a Dio, accentuando le miserie e le laidezze del mondo e le brutture del mondo. E questa duplice direzione dell'anima umana Bonvesin espresse sotto forma di visione nel suo libro delle Tre Scritture, che è l'opera sua più complessa e più significativa, ove in quartine monorime di Alessandrini sono descritte le pene dell'inferno, scrittura negra, la passione di Cristo, scrittura rossa, le glorie del paradiso, scrittura dorata. Non è un vero poeta, Bonvesin, ma rivela un discreto senso artistico nel maneggio del verso e della lingua. Un linguaggio ibrido e rozzo adoperò invece il francescano Giacomino da Verona, che nella seconda metà del secolo compose un De Gerusalemme celesti e un De Babilonia civitate infernali. Parimenti in quaternari alessandrini descrivendo a colori grotteschi e popolari i due regni dell'oltretomba. Again, this was all about letteratura moraleggiante e religiosa nell'Alta Italia, in Northern Italy. It's, I think we're getting there because now we're approaching San Francesco d'Assisi e Fra Jacopone. We're now approaching the ones that we know a lot more about in terms of Italian literature, the authors of important works. And also we get to Il Dolce Stil Novo. That's like the letteratura provenzale, where they speak about woman in a divine way. And Dante too does some of his poems. Then there's poeti realistici, and I think that's about it for the. Welcome to Andrew Padula. Oh, that's good. I've just finished la letteratura dottrinale in Francia ed in Italia e letteratura moraleggiante e religiosa nell'Alta Italia, around Milano, in the 12th and 13th century, 14th century even. Okay, now I'm going to leave that and we're going to the next one, but before I have to have a drink, and then what I'm going to do, I'm going to sing you a song. I'm going to sing me a song. And maybe this song applies to me. Non discordar di me. This is sung by people with a big voice, the tenors, the baritone. And it goes something like this. And I'll show you the words. Here we go. Ok. Non discordar di me. Partirono le rondini dal mio paese freddo, senza sole, cercando primavere di viole, nidi d'amore e di felicità. la mia piccola rondine partì, senza lasciarmi un bacio, senza un addio partì. Non ti scordar di me, la vita mia legate a te, io t'amo sempre più, nel sogno mio rimani tu. Non ti scordar di me, la vita mia legate a te, c'è sempre un nido nel mio cuor per te, non ti scordar di me. Non ti scordar di me, la vita mia legate a te, c'è sempre un nido nel mio cuor per te, non ti scordar di me. So, non ti scordar di me. I think these particular works of mine may remain, make people enjoy life a little bit more, because, you know, we always make mistakes. You want to be precise in things. The realities of life are that perfection is just an ideal. And it's always better to show your mistakes and live with them, rather than trying to attain something that is you can't, you can reach for a moment or two, but to each his own. And some people want to go up to a perfect reality, and others are more humble and they will accept it. Now, after this one here, there's a bit of Italian now. Speak, parla, speak. And today we are doing l'animale preferito. Ok? Hai un animale preferito? Sì, ho un cane. Sì, ho un cagnolino. Welcome to Frank Mazzacca. Sì, ho un gatto. Sì, ho un gattino. Sì, ho un pesciolino. Sì, ho un uccellino. Sì, ho un topolino. Sì, ho un porcellino d'India. Notice ino, cagnolino, gattino, pesciolino. They are the little ones, the baby of the animal. But then we continue. Sì, ho un coniglio. Sì, ho un pappagallo. Sì, ho le cocorite. I don't know what cocorite is. It's a new word for me. Sì, ho sì, ho una tartaruga. Se ho un agnellino, se ho una capretta, se ho un cavallo, se ho una lucertola. Now, if you then want to have a look, again, this is the way to do it. You get speak, parla, speak, and you have it next to you. And you can play games with this. How do you say a rabbit in Italian? How do you say a bird? How do you say a mouse, etc.? Ok? Hai una vaschetta per i pesci? Il tuo cane è feroce? No, non morde, però abbaia molto. Il gatto fa sempre le fusa, come è peloso. So there you are. Hai una vaschetta. So have you got a fish tank? Is your dog ferocious? No, it isn't. It doesn't bite, but it barks a lot. The cat's always purring. How furry it is. Come è peloso. Pelo is, hair. So that's it. Today there's only one page of from Speak Parla Speak, and now from that we're going to go to another wonderful. Oh, what have I done? I've got to come back to me. Never mind. All these mistakes that I make must make you laugh. But anyway, the next one is La gente chiacchiera. this is a good one. It's a lovely little story that is, it's important. Okay, I'll read it to you though. You have to understand. La gente chiacchiera. Just listen. This is una recita per carnevale. Il padre. Figlio, prepara l'asino perché andiamo al mercato. Il figlio. L'asino è pronto, possiamo andare? Guardate, now the people are commenting. Father and son are moving towards, I might as well show you. See that? There you are. So they're going towards, okay. So they're on this. These are the characters, the people, father, son, and the donkey. Okay. Now I have to come back to me and I'll read it to you. Guardate quei due, hanno un asino e vanno a piedi. How stupid they are. Il padre, hai sentito quello che dice la gente? Sali sull'asino, go on the donkey. Figlio mio, così non avranno nulla da dire. So they won't say anything. So you go on so they'll, because they're stupid. So, well, at least go on it and people won't talk. And then the people say, guardate quei due, look at those two. Il figlio giovane e sano sta sull'asino. The donkey, the son who's young and healthy is on the donkey. E il povero vecchio padre, the poor old father, is walking. Don't ask him whether he wants to walk or not. That's the judgment. Il padre then says to the son, scendi figlio mio, get down my son. Salirò io sull'asino, I will go on the donkey. Non posso sentire queste brutte chiacchiere su di te. I can't bear listening to people saying these words against you. Oh, che mondo! Un uomo ancora forte cavalca l'asino e un povero ragazzo debole deve andare a piedi. Then the father is on the donkey and people comment, oh, what a world we live in. A man who's still strong is, goes on the donkey, and the poor boy who's weak, who's young, he has to walk. Il padre, then the father comments, sali anche tu, come on, you two, will make everyone happy, yeah? Così la gente non avrà nulla da dire, so people won't have anything to say. So the two of them get on top of the horse, of the donkey. Here we go. See, so far we've had that, the son there, the father, then the father, and the comments, then the people, and these two are on it. So, we got il padre, facciamo così figlio mio. No, il padre, sali anche tu, get on top of it, so people won't have anything to say. But then they look at them, poor donkey, how nasty, what nasty owners the donkey has. Ma perché non si... But why don't they feel for the donkey? Why don't, they think of the donkey? Can you imagine two people on a poor donkey? So they're going to talk. So the father says, facciamo così figlio mio, let's do this my son, prendiamo l'asino sulle spalle, let's take the donkey on our shoulders and we'll take him to the market. And then people are laughing. Guardate, avete mai visto due uomini con un asino sulle spalle? Have you ever seen a donkey on the shoulders of two men? Oh, ma questo but this is really funny. Il figlio. Ed ora babbo che facciamo? Now, Dad, what do we do? Il padre, then the conclusion. Senti figlio mio, ora facciamo quello che vogliamo. Let's do what we want to do. Without listening, senza ascoltare le stupide chiacchiere della gente, the stupid talk, comments of the people. So there, the people always got a little angle in which to criticize. Doesn't matter what you do. You do it well, you don't do it well, you do this, do that. They always have something to say. But there is a moral to all this. La cosa più importante, the most important thing, non importa che tu sia uomo o donna, vecchio o fanciullo, operaio o contadino, soldato o studente o commerciante, se ti chiedo qual è la cosa più importante per l'umanità, rispondi prima, dopo, sempre, la pace. That's what you need, peace. And on that note, there, I finished another one. I'm going to now enjoy myself with another song. Okay, and this time, it's a song for Christmas, really. Well, it's part of my work here, so and it's in Neapolitan. It's called La Crema Napoletana. Very famous, and I think I'll do not a bad job with this one. Mia cara madre, sta per trasi il Natale, e sta lontano il chiume sapa amare, come vorrei allumare due tre biancale, come vorrei sentire un zampugnare, e ninne miei facitelo presepio, e a tavola mettito piatto mio, facite quando a sera da vigilia, come se mienza a voi stesse pur io. E ce ne costa la crema st'America, a noi napolitana, che noi cagniamo cielo Napoli, come amare stuppana. Mia cara madre, che so è denaro, per chi si chiama patria non so niente, ma tengo qualche dollaro e mi pare, che non sono stata mai tanto pezzente, ma sono tutte notte a casa mia, e de creature miei ne senta la voce, ma voi vi sono come Anna Maria, e state impiettenate, figli in croce. E ce ne costa lacrime st'America, a noi napolitane, che a noi che ci chiamiamo cielo Napoli, come amare stuppana. Ma avete scritto che assunto Lulella, chiama chi l'ha lasciata e sta lontana ancora, che va già di se è figlio con una mamma, facitelo tornare che è la signora, ma no, non torna, me ne resto fuori, e resto affaticato per tutte quante, e saggi perse patria, casa, onore, i so carne maciella, so emigrante. E ce ne costa lacrima st'America, a noi napolitana, che a noi che ci chiamiamo cielo Napoli, come amare stuppana. If you want to listen to it from someone who sings it very well, Massimo Ranieri is the one who sang this, and it's a little story about a migrant who went to America and was sending money to his children and his wife. And it says when it's the vigil, Christmas vigil, it's a big fuss in Italy, make sure that you put a seat for me around the table, okay? Because then you remember that I'm away. And then he says, he has nostalgia. He says, che so è denaro. What, money. What's that? You might as well be happy, to be happy really. It's better probably to be poor and happy than, than being a migrant and then dreaming of your mother as if she was a Madonna, a Maria. Okay, and then the reality comes. They write to him, "Avete scritto, you've written to me that that my young daughter wants her mother, and she's gone away. So the young daughter has got the father away, and the mother's gone presumably with other men, etc. And he says, do me a favor, tell that woman to come back to you, but I can't come back because I'm a migrant. I have to earn money to send you so that you can live well. I am carne maciel. I am meat for the butcher as a migrant. And they leave everything behind, and they sacrifice their time to make a living for their family overseas that was struggling. And so he loses his wife, he loses his family, but he's a migrant and he sends the money home. And that was the Italian migrant of 1950s and 60s after World War II. And let's not talk about the migrants before that, the ones who went to America from the 1880s onwards and even before. There was a lot of prejudice against Italians at the time in America, really a lot. And that's why, the crime thing came about, because the ordinary law did not want to interfere with any crime committed in those little communities of migrants. So that's where the Godfather comes in. All right, well, that's it. That's a good one. Now, we've done that one too. It's time for the Roman Empire. Yes, this time here we are, I'll read you, I'll do the Latin first. This is where the Italian comes from. Welcome to Antonio Danzi. I'm going to read now, looking forward to the games. This is from, in Latino, okay? Post die dum Gaius Cornelius in tablino scribit, subito intravit Titus, frater eius. Salve Gai, clamavit Titus, quid agis? Bene, respondit Cornelius, sed semper sum ut vides negotiosus. Cui Titus procerto abeo te cras non laboraturum esse, omnes enim cives Romani ad munera ituri sunt. Spero te quoco ad munera iturum esse. At Cornelius munera inquit, quid dicis mitita? Prodime di immortales, exclamavit Titus, cras Caesar amphithearum aperiet novum, tu tamen rogas quid dicam. Cornelius autem cum risu, non sentis me per iocum hoc dixisse. Certe hic dies maxime omnium memorabilis erit, costat servos strenue laboro visse et amphitheatrum summa celeritate confecis, martialis epigrammata de spectaculis iam scribit, plurimi gladiatores mox clamabunt, ave imperator morituri te salutant. That's how I might leave a little bit for later. That's how the Romans spoke. Now, you must have understood a few words, I'm sure. That's where monera, money, But in Italian sono soldi. But monera, the English have used that. Spero te quoque, spero, from sperare, to hope. Tu tamen rogas quid dicam, what are you saying? Frater eius, his brother. Subito intravit, yeah, so a lot of the Italians from the Latin. Anyway, this is we talked about last time, was the early empire of Rome. Okay, so I continue from last week. The Julio-Claudian dynasties. We talk a lot about the Chinese dynasties. but there were some dynasties in Rome as well. The personal lives of the Julio-Claudian dynasty inspired much scandal and malicious rumour that were gleefully reported by ancient writers such as the biographer Suetonius, a bit like the English tabloids. There was Rome. They used to write graffiti on the walls and attacking people. They used to sing, say bad things in public. Unbelievable. They went to the pool to criticise others and make plans. Much of it has been dramatised in modern novels and films, such as Robert Graves' I, Claudius and Claudius the God. You can look them up. Good films. I must look them up too. I haven't seen. I think I, Claudius. I'm not sure. I thought it was more in the theatre. Even after the falsehoods have been eliminated, the truth still sometimes sounds like a soap opera. The man who ultimately succeeded Augustus was his stepson, Tiberius, who had been a loyal and effective subordinate in military and political affairs. Unfortunately, he had never been Augustus' first choice as a successor, and he was old and disillusioned by the time Augustus had no one else old enough left to succeed him. Tiberius' biggest problems were that he instinctively disdained many of the old families in the Senate and let himself be too influenced by Sejanus, corrupt head of the Praetorian Guard. Sejanus had tried to eliminate other members of the Julio-Claudian family and take control through marrying Tiberius' niece. By the time Tiberius found out about Sejanus' plottings and had him executed, only his nephew Caligula was in position to succeed. After Augustus, you get Caligula. Oh, God. Now, you've got to see the film about Caligula. My God. It's worse than Nero. Caligula had suffered a very abnormal childhood. At first, he was spoiled by his father, Germanicus, who had been in line to succeed Tiberius. When Gaius was a small boy, his father's soldiers had made him their mascot dressed in a soldier suit and had named him Caligula, Little Boot. So Caligula means Little Boot. I always thought Caligula as being a bad person, a bad emperor. After the tiny army boots, caligae, he wore. When he arrived in Rome to head the state, his personality and generosity made a good first impression. He gave the Praetorians a large cash bonus, provided the people with grand spectacles, and even displayed interest in the government. He had no real training for the job, however, and before long, began to show bad temper, arrogance, and irrational fear of plots against him. As emperor, he lived in terror of losing his life in palace intrigue, and he finally ended up in Tiberius' eccentric refuge on the Isle of Capri. Despite a promising start, he quickly proved unfit to rule and was assassinated in AD 41. Wow. So Caligula only lasted what? Oh no, this is AD, after Christ, after Augustus. Welcome to Angela Imola and Antonio Danzi. Good. The Praetorian Guard proclaimed Caligula's uncle Claudius as the new emperor. I think I've seen this bit about in the Roman Empire, which is on Netflix. I've seen it, and I think Caligula, Tiberius, Sejanus, they're all there. Good one to look at. Born prematurely with mental and physical infirmities. Oh, good. The Praetorian Guard proclaimed Caligula's uncle Claudius as the new emperor. Born prematurely with mental and physical infirmities, Claudius had not previously been seen as suited to rule. He was more able than many had realised, however. Unfortunately, lack of affection as a child made him easily susceptible to scheming wives who tried to use him to promote their family interests. His fourth wife, So don't forget, he was born premature and he had physical and mental infirmities, but he liked women. His fourth wife, Agrippina, the younger, probably killed him with poisoned mushrooms in order to obtain the throne for her son Nero. From Caligula to Claudius to Nero. Rome was in a bad state, I'll tell you. After she had brought about the murder of Claudius' own son, Britannicus. So that's not a lovely one. Agrippina was a lovely one. She killed Britannicus in order for Nero to inherit the throne. Nero Claudius Caesar was 16 years old when he became emperor. Agrippina encouraged him to devote himself to music, drama and chariot races so that she could be the power behind the throne. Eventually, tired of her dominance and had her murdered. What a lovely guy that he murdered his own mother. He spent more and more time and money on the circus, theatre and musical contests while he neglected the finances and the provincial armies. After a great fire destroyed much of Rome in AD 64, he rebuilt the city and erected a new palace called Domus Aurea, Golden House. On such a lavish scale, they was accused of starting the fire to have the chance of showing off. He deflected attention to the Christians in Rome by accusing them and condemning many to horrible deaths. His cowardice and brutality alienated many Romans, but the final straw was a costly tour of Greece, where he competed as a performing artist in public competition in AD 67 and 68. When Nero returned to Rome, he faced a thoroughly hostile Senate and armies who were rebelling because they had not been paid. Under the threat of troops coming to carry out the Senate's decree of execution, Nero took his own life. A true coward. He was unbelievable. Despite their personal deficiencies and their inability to get along with the Senate, which resented the increasingly centralized power of the emperor, the Julio-Claudians had provided the Roman Empire with 2 generations of peace and prosperity. Tiberius promoted public careers for the Equites and consolidated the military gains of Augustus, while Claudius headed the province of Britain through conquest in 43. Claudius further professionalized the imperial bureaucracy by using loyal freedmen and promoted economic growth by building roads, bridges and harbours. During most of Nero's reign, capable advisors such as the philosopher Seneca kept things outside of Rome on an even keel. That's it for today. There's more to come, but before I leave you, I've got to finish off my reading here. Cui titus me Hercule totum populum continebit hoc amphitheatrum cramane vie erunt plene hominum qui ad omnibus partibus ad spectaculum congredientur. Ita inquit Cornelius, puto tamen Aureliam eo non ituram esse, sis enim Aureliam neque munera neque sanguinem amare. Aurelia domi manere mavult, Marcum tamen mecum sum ducturus, iam adolescens est et mox togam virilent sumet, sextus autem quod aduc perest, domi manebit, nam ut docet Seneca, quo maior populus, eo plus periculum, quota ora tu ad amphitheatrum cras mane es itures. And that's how Latin is written. Here it is. See that? Postridia dum Gaius Cornelius. Salve Gai. Salve amico. Salve Angela. Salve Antonio. Fantastic. You can speak straight away. You can speak Latin. So that's it for this. I've shown you. And now, as we're getting towards the end, the last one, La Rosa Nera. It's a beautiful song by none other than Gigliola Cinquetti. Una rosa di sera non diventa mai nera. Hanno distrutto il nido ad una rondine, hanno gettato un sasso fin lassù, hanno tagliato le ali a una farfalla e la farfalla non si muove più. Stanno cambiando il mondo, stanno uccidendo me, ma una rosa di sera non diventa mai nera. Hanno portato un uomo alla frontiera e da quel giorno non si è visto più. Hanno gettato inchiostro nel torrente e nel torrente non si beve più. Stanno cambiando il mondo, stanno uccidendo me, ma una rosa di sera non diventa mai nera. E tutto va, finché la terra si scoppierà. E tutto va, finché la terra non scoppierà. E tutto va, finché la terra non scoppierà. E tutto va. I wrote a poem called L'inquinamento, and my final thing was where the world had blown up, and there was somebody with a guitar, il suonatore afflitto con la chitarra, and they were singing all the good things that used to happen in the world before it blew up. Not bad. But then what did I do? Then I put that strophe in the front, and then I was telling the story. Somebody else put it at the end, but I changed it to the original. So today has been an interesting one. It's 12:30. I've done my Latin, my songs, the storia della letteratura italiana. Look, it's going to get better now because we're actually moving towards the real literature that we meet that we meet in Italy's history, in Italian history. And I have a lot of resources for Italian literature from the 13th century onwards. Before that, I didn't have it. But after this, there's a lot. So on this note, I just want to remind you to please go to Insegna.com for these particular podcasts, because they're all lined up for you in the blog section. And whilst you're at it, you can have a look at some of the books and maybe order a few to help Tom Padula, continue his work. We all need to pay our bills, unfortunately. And they're all going up, the bills. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable what the world has come to. Inflation. It's good for some. People who are very highly involved in, with a lot of cash, etc., they're doing very well. And the people who, live day by day, etc., struggle along, they're going to struggle even more. So on that note, good luck to everyone. Don't worry about it. Tomorrow is another day. This is Tom Padula from TomPadulaTV on YouTube and Insegna Booksellers. Ciao.